everyone, my name is Josh and this is Whimsical and Interesting Musings, or WHIMs I like to call it. And today I'm going to be doing a review for the Inside Number 9 episode, Nine Lives Cat. And what this episode basically is it starts out as a very kind of, at first you think it's going to be a very kind of straightforward take on the classic, police procedural dramas like Marcella, Scott and Bailey, and those sorts of shows where it often involves one detective or a detective and their assistant investigating a crime that is very close to their heart, but they have very questionable methods, but by God they get it done and they are able to win the day. They'll have a nice coffee and a donut, or a nice coffee and a slice of cheesecake or whatever, and everyone lives happily ever after, the end. But this episode does something very interesting halfway through, where it is, and I'm not really going to reveal the twist just yet, but the episode very quickly establishes this is going to be a little bit different than most Inside Number 9 episodes. In fact, a lot of people would say that it literally is kind of playing with a lot of very interesting cliches. In fact, there's a lot of very cheesy lines, like, say, for example, I'm just paraphrasing here, but there's one line where she goes, you don't need a cock and balls to, run down a criminal, or I'm bad news in 8-inch stiletto heels, and things like that. And things like that really do kind of give you the impression that, oh yes, this is going to be one of those episodes where it's going to embrace this cheesiness, apparently. But this is Inside Number 9. This isn't just simply your standard, horror anthology series or comedy anthology series or whatever. This is a anthology series that really thinks about its premise before it goes deep into the details. So immediately, right away, I knew that this wasn't your average Inside Number 9 fare. And we follow the character of Kat, who is a police sergeant who is literally been thrown off of a case of a missing boy, but she is since being taken off the case, she has been obsessed with finding this child and finding the culprit who did it. And she's very much, this very cast iron Jane Tennyson from Prime Suspects kind of character, where she has very questionable methods and she is very kind of, hard as brass in regards to getting the job done, but she gets it done nonetheless. And excuse me, that's one of the things that really kind of makes the character compelling to begin with. But you do kind of feel like, yes, that's all she really does. Like, she has this very kind of bog standard way of looking at the world. Like, she has this very kind of, the reason why she's only doing this case is because she has a child and she really cares about her. But that's all you really get. And then when you are introduced to the main character, who you think is going to be her superior, played by Steve Pemberton, you really do get this idea that that's all she really is. She's just a series of witty quips that are cop cliches, and that's all. And then you get into the twist, which is that, she literally has a apartment that literally is just a few bare cupboards, very empty looking house, like a few bare cupboards. She has one bowl of Cocoa Pops in a uppercase cabinet, and she has a bottle of vodka and one spoon. Would a real person live like this? I don't know. But yeah, I think this is one of the examples of Inside Number 9 basically telling us that we're intentionally playing this down, because there's actually a much deeper twist that comes into play halfway through. She begins finding everything kind of strange. The fact that she kind of keeps waking up in the middle of the night or in the early hours of the morning, and she keeps going downstairs to have a bowl of Cocoa Pops with vodka, and she has a cat named Kidney Spears, and she has a daughter who she doesn't really see that much, but she knows she has this very kind of strong bond with. It really does kind of start to make you think, well, okay, there's something seriously wrong here, what's going on? And then halfway through, you realise that Steve Pemberton's character, who we thought was just one of her superiors, because the show could very easily set it up that she is basically just living in this state with these bare cupboards and only a few select things in various drawers, because she might be, this case might have ruined her. Like, she might have, been thrown off the case, and now she's, permanently in a state where she's literally trying to support herself, but she can't pay back the bank. So of course they get the bailiffs in, and of course now they're removing stuff, remove furniture and stuff. She could have been in a very bad way. So that's one example that I went into this with. But then when we get the twist that she is in fact a fictional construct, she's a fictional character, it immediately turns the tides, and immediately Kat is now forced to be something outside of herself. She's now had to, realise that she's had to literally fight for her literal existence. Like, she even says to Steve Pemberton's character, look at you, you think you're some big archetypal creator, but I'm sorry, you're wrong. Like, my life is real. Everything is real. And he goes, well, prove it then. What do you think is actually real? And she goes, well, I have a daughter. And he goes, well, what's her name then, Kat? And she literally can't think. She can't think of her daughter's name, but she knows that there's this very strong connection between the two of them. Or has that been an entire illusion? That's what I really love about this episode. And that's why I really wanted to make a video about this particular episode 4. Like, imagine you have your life. You're going about your daily routine. You have your job. You have your family. You have your friends. You have the things that you do. You go on YouTube, you watch Netflix, you read books, you read manga, you play video games, you eat, you sleep, you do all sorts of things. You go out and you hang out with friends. But then one day, someone you haven't met before comes to your door and says, oh, how's your family life these days? Or how's your, friends going? And then they just come out with, well, how would you like, why do you want to know this stuff? Like, you're a stranger to me and all this stuff. And then immediately they come out with the sense of, oh, well, you're a fictional construct. You're a fictional character and your entire life's a lie. Imagine hearing that. Like, imagine hearing that you're essentially a fictional character. Everything you ever thought was real is in fact a lie. And part of me is reminded of the show Westworld, where basically the whole entire premise of Westworld is you have these androids in an amusement park called the Dallas Corporation, who are basically characters in this big open world amusement park. So it's basically like a video game, but you get to interact with the residents, and they have a few scripted scenarios where if you go up and talk to them, they'll say this very generic stuff, and then they basically move on, but they look very lifelike. And then imagine hearing them say that you're basically a construct, we invented you to fulfill this very kind of bog standard archetypal role, and you have no real agency outside of that. That's a horrific idea. So when Nine Lives Cat presents this idea to us, and then they add the concept of going to the bottom drawer, that makes me even more terrified, because I'm a writer myself, and I have been, sharing some of my own work on this channel. I've shared a few chapters of my novel that I'm working on, and I'm kind of trying to get my other novel from Sleeper's Notebook showcased on this channel. I even played a little bit of a short story from that particular novel into a video that I uploaded recently. So I have been uploading my own content. I've actually been thinking to myself, I wonder how my fictional characters feel about me coming to them and asking them these questions and doing all these other things. But that's what you do when you're an author. You kind of, you want to get to know your characters, and you want to get to know the story that they're part of. And because my stories are very character focused, you do get to spend a lot of time with them, and you get to know a lot about them before I even put pen to paper. And sometimes they are very half-formed, so that when I do get to writing them, they do start to take shape in their own minds. But you have to know your limits as a writer, and you have to know what you can take with these, what you can give to these characters, and what they can give back to you. So it's a very bizarre exchange, and it's a very bizarre process. But I think you have to be in a very creative mindset, or you have to write, or at least be creative yourself to understand it a little bit. But it is a very weird concept, I'm not going to lie. But I do feel like when I do write my characters, I want to write stuff that I would like to read. So whenever I write, say for example, Riley Keller in Seeing Red, I basically am writing myself to a certain degree. He's disabled. He kind of, is mostly living with other people, and he tries to, survive in his life overall. But he occasionally goes out on dates, and he occasionally goes and meets people. But yeah, for the most part, he mostly, stays in his own world. And I basically took that idea and basically put it into a story and changed the character's name, obviously. But what I really like about the entire idea is that you are essentially, you're either a creator or you're an architect. And the architects like to plan the entire universe, like everything down to the last, tree that a character is looking at. It will always have a name, and it will always have an origin. But some characters are just gardeners, where they plant little seeds and they'll eventually grow into something. And I think that's the sort of writer that Ezra is, who's the author, who's played by Steve Pemberton. He's a gardener. He likes to plant seeds, and hopefully they'll grow into something. And he's kind of a bad gardener because he kind of lets his characters stew and suffer. But I think he's mostly, what I think is the big problem with Ezra is he's always trying to guess the market. Instead of thinking to himself, what would I like to read? What would I like to read in the crime fiction genre? He's kind of relying on cliches. He's relying on the female cop formula and not doing anything interesting or anything new with it. He's just kind of saying, well, okay, let's, do this. Whereas I took that scenario and said, well, what if instead of it being a police sergeant or a detective of sorts, why don't it be a police officer? Because police officers have to do a lot more dangerous stuff than the DCIs and the DSIs and things like that. So I thought it'd be much more dangerous, because I'm a huge fan of the film Hot Fuzz, and in that film you see basically how dangerous the life of a police officer can be. Like, they have to literally put their lives on the line in order to make a lot of us safe. And I felt that that's much more compelling. And of course, having the main character in my story be a character who is a police officer and who literally has to go out on the line and do all these dangerous things, I thought that was much more compelling. And it's much more compelling if you're looking at it from the point of view of a child of that character reacting to that stuff, and him basically wrestling with the idea that if something happens to you, I'm on my Todd. That's an interesting idea to me, and I felt like that's a much more compelling element for drama. So I put that all into my novel, and I thought, that's how you do it, Ezra. That's how you do it. Like, it's not hard. And I kept on wanting to shake the guy and say, write this character more interestingly because they're suffering because of you, kind of thing. And I really do feel like I wanted to literally shake Ezra. Like, it's not hard to write a compelling character, Ezra. Like, put stuff that you want to see into these things. Like, that's what I do whenever I write. So yeah, it does get frustrating. But this episode is really fantastic. I love the cliched lines that Kat gets to spew to her superior. And I love the line, like, I'm trouble in 8-inch stiletto heels. Like, I just love that line. Like, I can just imagine it happening. But it's so corny, and it's kind of a bit sexist in a way as well. But at the same time, I do like it. It's very cheesy and it's very over the top, but it's intentionally done so, I feel like, and it's intentionally meant to be poking fun at those things. But Ezra doesn't know that he's making fun of these things. He just it's kind of trying to play them dead straight. But part of me, I also want to bring up something else. I do feel like, and feel free to let me know in the comments if you totally disagree with this idea, but I feel like this could have been presented as an hour-long Inside Number 9 episode. This might be a very controversial opinion, because the whole entire inherent idea behind Inside Number 9 is it's meant to work in a 30-minute timescale. But I feel like this could have been a very interesting hour-long special of the series. Like, this could have been a very interesting idea where they just played it as a very conventional missing person story. Dial back the cliches, but include include enough cliches to the point where you feel that, oh, this is something that we're very familiar with, and oh, we can have a little laugh at how cliched this is. But then when it needs to get dark, make it dark, and you can utilize the split screen effect that they used for another episode of Inside Number 9. You could have utilized that, and that could allow you to go to all these different locations, even though technically you're still inside the number 9 of her house. So you could have figured out ways around it. So I feel like that could have been one way in which they could have done this and really flesh out the characters and make it another stellar Inside Number 9 episode. But yeah, I think this episode's really fantastic, and I love the ending where it's revealed that Ezra is in fact a construct of his own, and he basically is a construct written by a woman who writes these very profound literary novels, and then she's now taking a crack at, a very genre-specific character, and she decides to write a story about an author who's haunted by his own creations. And that's an interesting idea, and of course it gives him a little bit of a chance to have a little bit of payback and find out that, oh yeah, it's not all that nice being a creation, is it? Like, it's not nice being a fictional construct, is it? Like, especially when you're treated to go to the bottom drawer. But yeah, this episode's fantastic. It's very funny, and I also have to hint that one of the names that I thought was very funny was Barnabas Bull, who is played by Reece Shearsmith, and he basically plays this character who is basically a autistic detective. He's on the spectrum, they say, and he was funny. A lot of his scenes were hilarious. I love the scene where Ezra is talking about film rights to his agent, and Barnabas Bull is just sort of whispering in his ear out of shot, like, get Matt Damon, and he goes, we can't use Matt Damon, he's American. Oh yeah, it's hilarious. And Cat's pet cat is a black cat known as Kidney Spears. And whenever I see a black cat in film, I always think of two characters, Thackeray Binks from Hocus Pocus, and I always think of Salem from the sitcom version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Like, that show was me and my sisters grew up with those shows, so those sorts of things like Hocus Pocus and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, so I always found myself going, oh, it's Salem. Yeah, but that's my... I really do like this episode. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's got a little bit of existential horror, and it also has a lot of laughs. I think this episode is fantastic, it's really fun to watch, and I really do think it's a great episode. But let me know what you think of this episode down in the comments, and I hope you're all having a very good day, and this has been Josh with Whimsical and Interesting Musings. Take care, and bye-bye for now.